Hello and welcome to the Trump Report, the late night edition, post-Democratic debates, night one. Thank you guys so much for staying up late and waiting for us. And special shout out to R. Scott Brown, who we were tweeting just a minute ago. So thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Christian Bladt. No, that's not true. Christian had fatherly duties tonight, so Tamra's stepping in to moderate our little panel tonight. Mm-hmm. And as always, Chelsea Galicia.
Hello there.
And Scott Moore.
Hi.
We're all so tired, you guys.
And I'm not sure if it was because the debates were exhausting,
Right.
like thrilling, or womp womp.
Yeah.
I'm siding a little bit more with the womp womp, like nothing too crazy exciting about it. I don't know what you think.
Yeah.
Let's start. Yeah. Let's start.
Yeah.
Scott, overall thoughts.
Well, Trump had tweeted that it was boring, and I said, on Twitter back to him essentially that, it was boring for him because he didn't understand what was going on. But for most of the rest of us, there wasn't any like dazzling moments. And I had a back and forth with someone earlier tonight that was saying basically, that we need to have a moderate, that's our best chance to win back the White House. And, they were talking about the 2018 election, and I said, well, those are sort of the workhorse candidates, the people in Congress and Senate, and they don't need to be as inspiring in a way, but for the presidency is of course we want someone that's knowledgeable in policy and is going to be making the changes that we want, as especially if you're a Democrat. But you also need to feel inspired, and you need to feel like you want to vote for this person, you're passionate about them, and you want to fall in love with them. And and we'll get into each person a little bit later, but I didn't feel that passion for anybody. I thought, there were several candidates that stood out, and I love certain candidates' positions, but I didn't feel that like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Yeah, there were some great pieces, there were some great lines, some good moments. I think a lot of people are saying that Julian Castro was kind of the surprise, like sort of
dark horse.
Yeah. And I think he really, and I think people say that because he had the moment where he named the people who we've all seen in the picture today that came out, or yesterday, a man and his daughter, laying dead in the Rio Grande.
When somebody, I don't remember who, had referenced the picture before, and they just said father and child, and
when he was able to say their names, that was Oscar and Valeria, and they had gone to a port of entry and they had been denied. And so giving them a name and a story, I think that's probably, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if you guys can remember any other like really highlight moments where he had, although he did have a strong moment when he was trying to ask everybody else, would you guys, take back the law regulation that makes it a crime to cross a border rather than a civil infraction. And that's where he came off, aggressive,
and
but
sort of debating with Beto a little bit.
Yeah, that was like this Texas takedown. But I think overall, I don't want to say I agreed with Trump, but I think what he was getting at that I could agree with is that we're looking for somebody who created a strong brand. And I hate to trivialize a presidency into like they need a brand, but in effect they do. What is it that they stand for that you can say in about 10 words or so?
Well,
yeah, but the other thing I think too is that, sorry to cut you off, is that with that many people, with 10 seconds here, 30 seconds here, 45 seconds here, I don't know if anybody really had the opportunity to.
Well, I think Elizabeth Warren kind of did when in most of the questions she was able to give an answer that was around corruption and big corporations and excessive profits by the top 1%. That creates a theme that begins to build a brand, and so very much that her brand of progressive politics is based around what, as I see it, cleaning up the corruption in Washington. So she names the problem. I think everybody is talking about solutions, great, and they're all varying degrees of the same solutions. I think the differentiator will be, do people relate to the cause of the problems that people put out. So Elizabeth Warren is saying the cause of the problems is the corruption, is the excessive role of money in our politics, although she didn't get that phrase out today. I thought it was really interesting that Bill de Blasio named the problem as well. And he said, to struggling Americans who have been told that it's immigrants who are making your life difficult, it is not the immigrants. It is, the corporate and the 1%. And that is true. That was, truth ringing in my ears. But I think for most people, they need to understand what that means in order to buy it. Because for some people, they will need to make a shift and wait, it's not immigrants, because it feels on some level like it is. I'm competing against these people for jobs. So it feels like that's the problem. And it's going to take a little bit more of an explanation. How is it really that corporations are doing this to me? Corporations are the one employing
They
me.
sure hit corporations. I mean, I feel like the first 15 minutes were just take down the 1%, take down corporations, regulate corporations, something like that. Scott, do you remember what you were going to say earlier?
No, I was just going to say, kind of piggybacking off what you were saying, Chelsea, is the fact that with the brand, it's that you want to feel inspired, you want to feel connected, you want to feel passionate. And some of the candidates did have their moments, like Julian Castro, like Elizabeth Warren. Cory Booker, I thought, had a few moments there too. But when you look back, the past almost 60 years, when you go back to from Kennedy on, you see the people that really inspired and brought people over from the other side were Kennedy, were Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama.
Democrats.
Well, I was going to say, and Ronald Reagan besides that, but a person that can kind of embody that passion and that inspiration, and that's what you kind of look for in a president, the leader that's going to bring everybody along.
Sure.
And so tonight I saw glimmers of that, like I was saying, with Elizabeth Warren. Julian Castro definitely, I think, was a surprise, although we saw him on I think it was the 2012 Democratic Convention when he came on for Obama. I think it was keynote or one of the speeches, and you could see that he's young, he's passionate, he's a good speaker. He's clearly knowledgeable. I think when he brought up like Section 1325, like you're saying with immigration, when he brought up some of those things, he really had done his homework, and he called out Beto for not doing that. And it was kind of, I think part of Beto's problem is the fact that he's kind of been riding on his personality more than actually knowing policy. And letting it, and where some of these people tonight in this debate really had to show that they understood policy, because they had to stand out to the Democratic voters and to the independents and to maybe some of those moderate Republicans that are fed up with Donald Trump and the current crop of Republicans. And so they really had to come across as knowing what they were talking about. And I thought he overall didn't come across that way at all tonight. I think he was going on too much of his personality cult.
Yeah. That speaking Spanish bit at the beginning. I'm glad that didn't go on. Like he didn't keep returning to that.
God, is this going to keep
and then Cory Booker, and then you had Castro doing that, and it was a little. It's like it comes back to that pandering where it's like you get so fed up of hearing everyone talk about, well, my father was an immigrant that had 5 jobs, and we grew up with a single mom, and it's like it feels so pandering, and it's like I want to hear about you. We understand
there were those moments of like the Delaney trying to interrupt. My grandmother was illegal, and then De Blasio, my black son, and then
his dad had his leg
I tweeted. I was like, his dad was a war, had PTSD and took his own life, and I was like, oh God, I hope this isn't like, do people know this about him? I hope this isn't the moment he chose to break this suicide news. Though it does feel a little bit like they're kind of prostituting their sob stories.
Oh, that's a good word for it.
That is a very good word for it.
And it is. It's a little bit cringeworthy. And
it is.
I understand that they need to go for the Latino vote, but even me, I was like this, like half Mexican, half white girl who can, speak. Like I was like, oh, come on, guys.
It was very uncomfortable. It's like stop.
And it was weird. I actually on Twitter saw that Frank Luntz, the Republican pollster, and language guru for the right, was like, actually, this is a good idea. And I was surprised that he said that, even though he said there's going to be a lot of people making fun of them.
I saw somebody a couple people appreciating that Warren said Latinx instead of Latinos. And she didn't speak Spanish, so that was probably a more savvy move.
Yeah, I think that was for the best
on her part.
Yeah.
So there was technical difficulties. There were Delaney's faces. I think there's already multiple memes about that.
Well, and Cory Booker had a couple times with his face too. I was like, oh, it was like the eyes were.
Yeah, I saw one where he was mean mugging
yes.
Beto.
For speaking Spanish.
Yes.
Because he wanted to get it first.
It's like, dang it, that guy took
I wanted to pander first.
Yeah.
Speak Spanish.
Yeah. But briefly, I mean, we can't spend too much time, but let's kind of go through the candidates and just kind of say, like, who anything stand out at all. And let's start with Tim Ryan. Chelsea, anything stand out about the Ohio rep, Tim Ryan?
Well, he got a little bit spanked by Tulsi Gabbard when he was talking about, we need to stay the course and stay engaged in these foreign affairs. I mean, we call them wars, even though they're not really declared wars, but our presence abroad. And that was a very interesting moment where he tried to say, we have to stay engaged, we have to stay the course, and Tulsi called him out. That was definitely not a great moment for him, but I think that he did have a line. I took way too many notes, and this is probably
That's why
come
I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, what are these notes?
To bite me. I do think that when Tim Ryan said, we cannot be the party of the coast, of the elite, that's not a good look.
That was great.
That's what I had in mind. Yeah.
I think that was good, but I don't know if that had a place on the debate stage. That's more of like...
I think that was. I saw Meghan McCain tweeted, like, not that this is the time to do it, but she said not one of these people are even attempting to appeal to Republicans, and I think that was one small instance where.
Well, I think it goes back to sort of what is the heart and soul of the Democratic Party going to be, and who are the people that they're going to go want to encourage the vote. And Tim Ryan did bring that up and said, basically you have to look for the working class now. And he brought up, white, black, he went on and on about it, gay, straight. But he basically said, in his opinion, the future of the party should be going back after the working class vote, which was a big factor in the Democratic Party, even up to Bill Clinton's presidency. And so his is being from Ohio, he thinks that is the way to go after getting back some of those voters that might have peeled away from Obama, and as we've seen in the upper Midwest last presidency. However, in 2018, we saw a lot of the people that had voted for Trump had gone back to the Democrats. So I think it's just a narrative on the heart and soul on what's, who the Democrats are going to really be going after.
I had to stop myself from... I was very struck by Tulsi Gabbard's silver streak, and then I was like, oh, if I'm going to comment on anybody's appearance, it will not be one of the women. So I stopped myself.
I stopped myself, too, because I kept thinking because of the silver streak that she was older, and then she's actually younger than me, and I was thrown off by that.
Really?
And then I thought, oh, is that me thinking that because she's a woman? So I was like, I'm not going to go there either, or was it because I saw the silver streak and then I just made an assumption that she was older, or the way she
I thought it was hip because
herself.
I thought it was like an intentional, like.
Well, I did too, but then it made me feel like she was older than I thought she was. I did not realize that she was only
and maybe
38.
That's
but
intentional because she
true.
doesn't, Pete Buttigieg, 37, getting a lot of heat for his inexperience and maybe looking older while being younger.
Yeah, well, I think
intentional approach.
That's probably right. Yeah, when you think about you want somebody that you feel like has gravitas but still is
and
youthful.
She mentioned almost every opportunity her military service, but as it maybe teetered on sort of pushing her personal story, but then again it was like, well, if anybody should, it's the veterans.
It fit in with what the points that she was trying to make about policy.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think her closing line of, we used to have a government of, by, and for the people, and right now we don't have that. It's of, by, and for the rich and powerful, is true. And I hope that resonates, because I know she's not the first candidate that I've heard say that. In fact, I was wondering if, the candidate that's going to be on tomorrow, Marianne Williamson, when she was running for Congress, that was a line that she used on her stump speech when she was running for Congress in 2014. And I was wondering if Marianne was sitting there thinking, oh, shoot, she took my line.
Yeah, right.
But it is a a good line, and I think it was effective.
And I do too, and I think it also kind of going back to what you were saying about, I think one of you had mentioned about going after Republicans a little bit, of just encouraging them. I think she did have a moment where she had mentioned that she grew up with conservative parents,
Yes.
and being in the military and having that background. I think it was a slight like appeal to Republicans, even though Amy Klobuchar didn't quite say that she was extending to Republicans by her saying she was electable and how she had won in deep red Trump counties to win statewide Senate in Minnesota.
Would
and
guns
her
be
appeal,
taken away from her grandfather and the deer hunters?
So I think there was a little bit of like, hey, I can target some moderate Republicans and everything, even though it wasn't blatant, because obviously they know who their audience really is. But there are people that are going to tune in that, like we've talked about earlier, moderates and independents for sure, that do tend to vote Republican, that might have been at least hearing from her and from Tulsi, and even a little bit from Tim Ryan, being able to be like, okay, they did kind of speak a little bit to some of their needs. And even Elizabeth Warren, as progressive as she is, was talking about how important it is for taking care of people. And when we get into like some of the individual issues like healthcare and things, I think some of that stuff would be of interest to Republican families that, have health concerns. And so there was some there for sure, I thought.
I think people are, at least CNN correspondents were kind of in consensus after the debate finished that Cory Booker was one of the standouts. So what are our thoughts on that? Cory Booker, I think to me, he brought a lot more than I was anticipating from him, because I hadn't heard much from him and wasn't really clear on any sort of policy, but he was I felt very confident and even aggressive at times. And I liked what he brought to the table.
One line that he used that spoke to me that I was like, yes, but I think for most people was just probably not heard really, is that he said that the indicators of GDP and the way that we currently measure the economy is not helping people in this economy. And that's one of the things that I believe fundamentally needs to change, is our use of GDP as a measure of the economy, because it doesn't measure it very well.
Right, and the stock market too.
Exactly.
Which is a whole other thing
so I really like that. I wish there was more time for him to like say more on that.
Yeah.
But that one I think was a good line, and I hope people heard that. I mean, I feel like he has a good presence. I didn't hear anything in terms of, public.
His neighborhood? Do we not? I'm a
brand.
little unclear on what kind of neighborhood he lives in. I don't know about you guys.
Yes, in Newark.
Actually, that was kind of a good brand building
I thought
theme
so too. That was
he
one of
came
my
back
things.
to, which is that I live in these places. I wonder if New Jersey is still a little like coastal for people to believe that he lives in like real America. But I mean, he definitely made it sound like it when he said, just up the street from my house, within the last year, 7 shots were fired, somebody was killed. So I thought that was that was something new that I had not heard from him, although I knew that he lived in Newark, but it's not a place that I have spent any time in. So he did a good job painting a picture of how he is staying connected to his constituents. And I think that
while dating Rosario Dawson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And always bringing it back to the shallow,
Yes.
what E! News is reporting on.
Well, Rosario Dawson's been politically active for a long time. When I marched in D.C. in April of...
She's no Alyssa Milano, but
2016. That was the time when I went to D.C. to get arrested. She was there for the same thing. She got arrested, I think, on like the last day of it was like a 4-day march that we did. And you know what? I watched, because you all like rushed the Capitol, and then when the Capitol Police say, this is your warning, step back or you will be arrested. And then those of us who didn't want to be arrested, you step back. The day that I chose to get arrested, I sat down. But, I happened to be nearby her as I was backing up. And she sat down, and then she got afraid, and then she came back out. And then kind of sort of reset down. So she was very nervous about getting arrested, but she has been...
on the front lines.
On the front lines, right. So, I mean, I guess that would be something that they... have in common, and it's not maybe the superficial, like she's just this beautiful actress.
Yeah. We talked about, we mentioned Klobuchar a little bit, but anything else stand out about her besides her more moderate or slightly, you know, appealing to the conservative side?
Well, I was going to say, just back to Booker, there were a couple lines that I really did appreciate from him. One was he did bring up about Central America and how we needed to go in there and fix some of the issues that we've caused.
Yeah.
Which other people brought up, but I think that's a very important point because that gets glossed over, and we've talked about it before, so I really appreciated that he brought that up.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Can I say something more on that? That he said we have to make investments in the Northern Triangle.
Yep.
You know, over the last couple of days, there's been talk about Jared Kushner's plan for the Middle East, and it revolves around helping double the GDP of Palestine and to lower the unemployment rate and to do all these great economic things. And he's being ignored by that region of the world, that they don't like that solution. And I said, that is the right solution for the wrong problem.
Right.
He needs to bring that idea here because we cannot... we can't arrest our way out of this. And it was a good line, is that and I think I saw it on the ticker when I walked by the TV earlier today, that Jared Kushner said no amount of peace agreement, no kind of peace agreement is going to work without an economic plan. And I was like, yeah, he should tell that to Trump, that no immigration no border wall, nothing is going to work unless you also have an economic plan that goes along with it. I understand that some people are like, well, that's not my problem, except it kind of is because we cause these problems. And then people say, well, I wasn't around in the 80s.
I didn't own slaves. You can use that for everything.
Right. But if you really want to solve the problem, it would be to make investments and to stop trying to exploit them. That's what happened, is that we wanted the best deal on produce and everything else that we got from there, and therefore exploited people.
So I appreciate he brought that up, because that is part of the basis of being able to really start to work on solving the problem.
Totally.
I also appreciate that he brought up, about violence to trans women, especially trans Black women, who we've seen disproportionately affected with murder
10
this
so
year.
far this year, right? 10, I believe.
At least. I know. Actually, I think the number's higher now. I think it's at least 19 or 20. But the fact that he brought that up to the debate stage, I thought was very important. So that definitely stood out. And then again, like you were saying about the being there when it came to gun control and talking about dealing with violence nearby his neighborhood. And I also liked his line about, too long that these insurance companies for health insurance have been profiteering from pain, which is also true too. And that stood out to me as well, because it is a huge thing. And Elizabeth Warren had brought it up too, but talking about Booker, I thought those were a couple points that really stood out to me. And then, like you were saying earlier, Chelsea, he was very confident. He had a couple really good, strong moments there that definitely he was one of the winners for tonight for sure.
Was he the one who said you need a driver's license to drive a car? Yeah, that was.
Yep.
You need a
I
license.
like that one too. Yep. And it's true. Absolutely 100% true.
And for people to say, well, but driving a car is not guaranteed by the Second Amendment or any other amendment. If you read the Second Amendment, it says well-regulated militia. So that could very well fit with the definition. Yeah, I don't know if
it
you
didn't say well-regulated militia without a license. So.
Right, and I don't know if that would run into problems with Heller, which in the case where the Supreme Court held that right, the Second Amendment is an individual right, which I believe was the wrong decision, but that's what it is at the moment. But you can still, even if it is a personal right, you can still be required to have a license. I would even go further and say you need a license and insurance.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And it would be the same thing. Like, look, you could have it in your house. Like, you could drive your car on your own property without a license. It's the same thing. You could have it technically without a license in your house. But the minute you're taking it outside or you're going somewhere, besides it just being concealed carry, you need to be licensed. You need to be insured. And you should be insured anyways if it's in your house, like anything else. But
with privatized insurance, privatized gun insurance, universal health care.
Well, there you go. You get universal health care, and then you can shift over to private insurance for guns. So
yeah, I think that's
how they could make up their money there in the health insurance.
Yeah, that's that.
Because it is a health insurance issue too, which some of the candidates brought up as well.
Oh, for a while, yeah. Let's touch on anything else from Klobuchar, and we can move on to somebody else if nobody has any other thoughts of anything that stood out. with her?
I think she held her own tonight. I was frankly a little bit surprised that she hasn't been doing better up to this point. I really expected
I did too.
that she would be up there, and I think she may have really been hurt by the allegations or the reports of how hard she is on her staffers. I don't know if that's it, but I don't know. I expected that she would be a higher contender. I don't know if she did much to move the needle tonight. I mean, she did well, but she was like a B. She was sort of in the middle of the pack, held her own, differentiated herself mostly by showing how moderate she is. And I would have expected that she would be sort of like her and Biden would be the two sort of moderate top contenders, but she's not anywhere near where Biden's polling, so that's
I think
interesting to me.
I think she was clearly more on the winner side tonight as far as the debate, as far as the group.
Top 5?
Yes. And I do agree with you. I think she did have the moderate stances, especially when it came to how we deal with health insurance and, having it privatized but having the public option. But I think she had more on the progressive side when it came to immigrants by, going on about her point about how immigrants are American and tying it to the economy and talking about how immigrants are the ones that do the jobs and work the fields and work hard, but also they're also the ones that work in, what was she saying about the, not Nobel laureates, but she brought up something about that side as well.
How many of them start businesses?
And exactly. So I thought that was kind of a good point to bring it up and kind of tie it back economically instead of saying like, oh, these are other people that are coming and stealing your jobs. They're actually providing jobs, or they're doing things that other Americans don't want to do. So I appreciate that. I liked her little quip about because I don't remember if it was Tim Ryan or who it was that was talking about the abortion issue. Maybe it was Jay Inslee, but somebody was, and then she brought up, oh, there are 3 women here that are.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah,
and then she also had that line, our president shouldn't be making policy in his bathrobe at 5 a.m.
Yeah. Which I think got one of the biggest applauses of the night, actually. So she had a couple moments there.
A little bit. And then even a line that fell flat. She said something about, that's what we call all foam and no beer.
Yes. Yeah.
And for me, it felt a little bit trying too hard.
That was folksy. But
was.
then afterwards, I heard, people were saying that was what helped her stand out, was as she leaned towards the more moderate thing, is that air of folksiness. Just don't call me late for dinner. That, I don't like it, but hey, I live on the coast.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City. We mentioned a couple of his standout comments for sort of, I guess, appeal, but any policies stand out or any quotes?
Quotes, there was one that I liked. There's plenty of money in this world and country. It's just in the wrong hands.
Yes, I love that too. Yep, I had that written down. That was actually a really good moment, I thought, for him.
I think that Democrats need to do a really good job of following through on that and explaining, because some Americans are like, they're railing on corporations, but corporations are who employ us. And the public needs to be educated that actually the biggest employer is small businesses, not these big corporations, and to say exactly why the money being in their hands is kind of constricting it all, and it's not really flowing into the economy the way it would be if it was.
Yeah, they're holding on to it and hoarding it and giving it to their
Because who said the line about board. How CEOs are making like 100 and something percentage raises every year, while the bottom tier is
I don't remember who said that. It may have been Tim Ryan, but
I was like,
but yes, it's those kinds of things where it said the CEO of McDonald's earned some 1,000% more than the workers there. But we can't just say that anymore, because we've said that in 2016 to show the differentiation, the income inequality gap that there is, but we need to explain why it doesn't work. Some people believe, well, because the guy flipping the hamburger isn't worth as much as the guy running the company. But we
not working as hard or nonsense like that.
Exactly. And I think that needs to be fleshed out a little bit. So yes, show the disparity, but then also show why it doesn't make sense. some people think, well, you need to pay the CEO that much, otherwise he won't do the job. Really? Is that
right? Do you need all those deals and those stock bonuses and again, the disparities on when these companies are so big, these corporations, they're beholden to their their boards and their stockholders, and they're not beholden to the people that are working for them and the ones that are struggling to make do. And that's what I think they need to bring up more, which, I think Elizabeth Warren does a good job with that. But going back to Bill de Blasio, he had a couple of moments, too, where he was a little bit of a bully, too. And I was like, oh, here we go, another New York, Trump. And it got old a little bit fast. He was cutting people off here and there. I think the other good point that he brought up to kind of remind people, even though he's not very popular, even in New York City, I think he's less popular than Donald Trump, which is saying a lot. But he did bring up the point, the fact that
he could not murder somebody on Fifth Avenue is what you're saying.
Exactly. But I think he did bring up a good point about just the fact that he runs the largest city in the country, which is bigger than many states, and that he runs the largest police force. And so he has a little bit of that balance of experience of both at the city level, but also with a city that's a lot bigger and has a lot more layers and a lot more than many states, than many senators and the Congress and some of the other people that were up there tonight, which was something to kind of remind people with his background, his experience being in a second term of running a city that size. Other than that, the thing that stood out to me was kind of the kind of the bully and the cutting people off part, which got a little annoying. But I don't put much towards him anyways of really going very far. Yeah, exactly. Definitely bottom five, even with a couple good points there. Definitely the bottom five.
I think we'll move a little faster with these. John Delaney. I said the
joke. I know. I was like, oh my god.
I thought he was doing great at first. He touted his business record, right? He brought that
entrepreneur.
up. Two-time entrepreneur, and
he wanted to be the most conservative Democrat up there. I think that was his play. It felt like it.
It felt. I do agree with you. I felt like he was trying to be like, okay, I'm going after the voters that had voted maybe for Obama and then voted for Trump, and going after those. Definitely, I think I do agree with you with that.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times he had his phrase, real solutions, not impossible promises, which I think is really damaging because these promises that we're getting from more of the progressive candidates are not just airy-fairy, impossible to deliver. They explain how they would deliver on them. So for him to say that these are impossible promises, I think is pretty damaging, and is frankly pretty ignorant.
I think it's old-fashioned because in the era of in the past 4 years, so many people who have been politically passive, have been mobilized. I say if Trump did anything for our country in the past 2.5, 3 years, it's that he's mobilized people who were previously politically passive, and that being the case, I think a general public audience is more tuned into the specifics that you guys are both pointing out and wrote down and took, notes about very specific details of policy. And I think those phrases like that, say it again,
it was real solutions, not impossible promises.
Yeah, I think people want more than that now that they're a little bit more sitting on the edge of their seat and not just so like.
But I am like beyond annoyed. Whatever the step is, impossible promises. See, nothing that any of these candidates have talked about, or nothing that I've heard any of the candidates who will be speaking on tomorrow, as progressive as they are impossible promises. He's making it sound like these are, way out there, and that they're not thought through. And I think, I get what he is trying to do, but I do too. It's damaging.
I get what he's trying to do too, but I also feel like, again, it goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the show, is that you need to feel inspired. You need to feel that a president is going to come up with big scope, big visions, and and then you make it happen as but he's making it, he's taking it away and being like, no, this is not realistic.
And he also shows another flaw that I think is important for any real viable candidate to keep in mind. It isn't just about the solutions, right? He's saying here it's real solutions. It's not just about the solutions, it's about naming the right problem. And I think that is something that I'm probably going to be coming back to a lot, because I'm going to be paying attention to what is the context, what is the frame that people say are the problem. Donald Trump did that very well. He said that the problems were, all the people.
Immigrants.
Right. So it's the person who names the problem that resonates with people.
I believe that's what Hitler did, and every notorious.
Well, no, and
but we can do it in a good way, right?
Mm-hmm.
We name the corruption, and that's what Elizabeth Warren said. It. We're going to name it. We're going to call it out.
Well, and it's again. That's one thing that Trump does well is name it and keep naming it, but you're naming it very simplified, very easy. Build the wall.
And incorrectly.
Immigrant, yes, of course.
But he's naming the problem.
Naming it, making it simple.
NAFTA is the problem.
And it sticks because people are picking up on that. And even if it's wrong, and we know it is, and he lies through his teeth, but the fact is he simplifies it and makes it simple.
Yeah.
And when you get too deep in the weeds, it does turn people off because they're like, okay, we just need something simple. We need something that's going to passion, that's going to drive people, that's going to make them feel inspired. And I thought Delaney did a lot of that.
Bottom 5?
Oh my God, he was my last.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah?
Number 10.
Well,
I
him
think
and de Blasio were kind of close.
I think-
and
because
that
de
whole
Blasio had really those two
he
great
did.
lines.
He had a couple good, but overall.
Wow.
No, he was maybe my number 6, de Blasio, but Delaney 10.
So next, Ray Inslee, who governor of Washington.
Jay.
Jay
He's my number
Inslee.
9. Didn't do anything for me. Sounded like a very old time.
He did have the line when they were going
Yes.
down the line, and he said,
That was my favorite line.
"Our biggest threat
To the
is Trump."
nation is
I
Trump.
think that was his shining
No,
moment.
but I like that because I think, again, I was surprised by the lack of people talking about Trump, because I think there is a passion on the left to get rid of it. I would love to have seen more of the candidates actually call him out the garbage that he is. Like, I would have liked to see more passion from the candidates about that and about that issue, and I thought they were pretty good, I will say, overall, about not disparaging each other overall,
Yeah.
or not disparaging Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or some of the front runners in the polls that are on tomorrow night. I thought they did pretty good with that, but I'd like to see more passion.
I thought it
about
was
them
a
against
good,
Trump.
it's a good moment. It gets a woohoo to say Trump.
Sure.
But actually, the problem of our politics is much larger
Right,
than
it's
Trump.
much deeper.
And it's actually where I thought Elizabeth Warren stumbled and went out of sort of brand. Her answer to that question, what's the
Climate
biggest
change.
was climate change. But in her comments to Chris Matthews after the debates were over, she said it better, that it's the role of money in politics that therefore spills over into every problem that we have. Climate change, our
Gun
military
control.
decisions, gun control, everything stems from the role of money in politics, and therefore the biggest geopolitical threat to us is our own corruption of our democracy.
Yes.
Right,
That's
and you're right, and it does go back to, it's bigger than Trump. But I'm just saying, I didn't hear enough people that really were going after him as some of the things like Jay did, and he went for the cutesy line, and that worked in that case. I thought it actually worked, because that's really the only thing.
I was
besides
disappointed
climate
that so
change.
many people were excited by that answer. It was like a cheap thrill.
No, it
It's a
was.
cheap thrill.
It was.
We need cheap thrills.
It
We need
was.
more cheap thrills.
But I want to see, and I hate to say that, but I want to see a candidate get a little bit more dirty and call him out more, because the more that we normalize his behavior and let him continue to get away with stuff, the more likely he's going to be reelected.
I think I would agree with that when we're at the moment
Right.
where they're debating each other.
I
Call
agree,
him out
yes.
to his face. Until then, that's not really what we're worried. We're most concerned with who is the candidate that best represents the values and ideals of where we want this country to go. It's like the goal is to put the basket in the basket, the ball in the basket,
yeah.
and you're not worried about who's
Yeah.
defending against that. So my computer's about to die. So
And-
I hope I remember everybody's lines.
It's all gonna be in your head.
We have 3 more candidates left. So Julian Castro, former housing secretary, he
And mayor
was,
of San Antonio.
I think people, and mayor of San Antonio. I think people are touting him as sort of did we already say the dark horse of the debate? Like he was sort of really
surprise
he really
up-and-comer.
yeah he really shone.
Well, I think he did have a good showing. I think if people know him, or at least have known of him, I'm sure for a lot of people this was the first time to really see him.
He was like the first one to announce, wasn't he? If I
Yeah,
remember
I think he was
correctly,
one of the very
way
first.
Beginning.
As some of us have known, he is, like we said, a great speaker, a great communicator, very smart on policy. the sad thing was watching a lot of these candidates tonight is that I kept thinking, well, not necessarily sad, but I was like, well, maybe they're not presidential material, but some of them could run for Senate. Some of them I could see in cabinets of a future Democrat. Yes.
Any running mates?
Running mate, great cabinet members in a Democratic administration. But a lot of the people which we talked about earlier didn't really stand out to me as actually being presidential timber this time around. But
Very
I think
smart, but not enough of a brand.
Exactly, and that's what it goes back to again. What we're
So
talking
you're
about.
saying Castro, this isn't his year, but you can see him.
I mean,
really...
his career in politics is not over.
Yeah,
Correct. He's only 44, and he's definitely passionate. Well, good, like we just talked about. But I think he was definitely the clear winners in the top three, probably I would say, out of everybody tonight.
I think that was
as well.
the consensus that I saw
Yeah,
online.
definitely. He did a very good job tonight getting himself out there. It'll be interesting to see if his numbers pop up a little bit in the polls.
And Julian's sparring with Beto, in my opinion, Beto, I think was low. He was pretty far down for me. We kind of touched on that already a little bit
There was
about
nothing that he said that like emotionally resonated, and even though this is about policy and stuff like that, again, something has to resonate and capture you.
Exactly.
And I think he's generally good at that. And I think maybe that's why so many people were disappointed, is because he's generally charming and he's able to, sort of touch and move.
He seemed nervous tonight. He seemed very choosing his words very carefully and like more serious than usual. Like he seemed very off on Beto.
Well, and I said this to people before, is like what works, and this works in any part of life too. You could work with the same group of people again and it doesn't work out right in a job, but like what worked for his campaign in Texas and what he did there doesn't necessarily translate to the presidential level. And that's why I've said from the very beginning, some of these people would be better served running for the Senate. Not saying that he is in particular, but I didn't see anything tonight that I think translates at the presidential level.
Sure.
And I think Julian Castro did a great job of calling him out on not doing his homework, because when I was watching, that's the first thing I thought of, was like he's focused too much on his personality and his cutesy things and his Instagram videos to really think about having the policy. And he's from a border state and from a border town. That's where he is from, and he should know this like the back of his hand.
Yeah.
And inside and out, and I think that was a point that he allowed to pass by him and didn't show what he was capable of, and that was a very important part that I thought didn't give him the top five, in my opinion. He was definitely not in the top five winners tonight.
And finally, Elizabeth Warren. She was definitely in the top five.
Oh, she was probably one, if not
number one.
Yeah, I mean, she just.
That's what I saw online. Going into this, personally, of these 10 candidates, is my personal top choice. She did well, I think, in about 70% of the answers, and in some other ones sort of blew the opportunity, like I said, in responding with climate change. Yes, that's true, but climate change or our inability to do anything about it is a symptom of the role of money in politics. And if she had come back to that theme, would have strengthened her brand.
I do think she came out of the gate so strong. It seemed like she was just kind of like, oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to hang back a little bit.
Well, I would agree with you, but in the sense that I think she came on so strong on top that it kind of like she had to kind of go back to lower gear, because energy-wise, it's just a long period of time, for 2 hours up there.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. And I
also,
think,
one of the CNN correspondents pointed out, because somebody was saying she only spoke at certain times. She didn't interrupt anybody. She waited her turn. And they were like in a negative way, saying like that was her fault. She was less aggressive. And they were like, what if she did, though? Like, if she interrupted anybody, she'd be through the ringer right now. She can't. She doesn't have
win.
that. She doesn't have that leniency. None of the ladies do.
No, and that's the unfair part of it. But I think, again, nobody can question the fact that she knows policy. She's incredibly smart. She has an agenda. Things are laid out. I mean, she has it all right there. Now, does she have the kind of star power that's going to catapult her through?
It's gonna eclipse Bernie and Biden.
And is she the one that moderates and Republicans and moderate independents are going to be drawn to? That's the thing. But I love what she says, and I know she's knowledgeable. She had it down, and clearly she was like the number one tonight.
I think if she sticks more to we've got to fix the corruption than talking about Medicare for all, right? So it's more about like, maybe Medicare for all is the right solution. She is with Bernie on that. But we don't even really know until we get the clear voice of Americans through this noise that is lobbyists, that is PAC money, that is, the whole revolving door and all the stuff that makes it really difficult. That pharmaceutical, I believe that they spend the most money of any industry influencing politics. So
absolutely,
it's very difficult to get a clear idea of what's the best way forward when they're doing so much to just create sludge in the process. And that's the first thing. We have to clean up the mess that we have first before we can create something new.
And I agree with you. And I think her populism message is so solid that it is going to attract people as we hear more from her. And it's a populism that was very much part of the Republican Party for so many years.
Yeah.
Going back a century ago to the past 56 years ago, that's basically the Republican Party. And that's what's so ironic now is she's not really bringing up things that are so out of the ordinary. And she really brought up a good populism point. So, yeah, she was definitely a clear winner tonight, I thought, overall.
Yeah. So our second debate is tomorrow with 10 more candidates. Is there anything that you guys are anticipating or looking forward to tomorrow? Chelsea?
It's a lot. That's the one with many more of the...
Well, 4 of the 5.
Got a lot more star power tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to seeing... I wonder if Pete Buttigieg is going to be asked about, the shooting that occurred in South Bend and his response. I really do think that Mayor Pete would be an amazing Pence replacement.
I agree, 110%. Let's replace one Indiana
and
for
also
another.
just poetic
one
justice.
Hoosier for another, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I hope that he does well.
Yep.
Not because he's my presidential choice, but because he is my VP choice.
Yeah, I love him.
Who else?
Biden, Bernie.
I'm actually very curious to hear if Andrew Yang is able to break through the noise. He does have a good point about his, the stuff
he was on the
automation.
Joe Rogan podcast.
Yes, he did really, really well there. So I'm looking forward to see if he can make that an issue and do a really good job at that.
Scott, anything else?
Well, no, I was going to say it is going to be interesting because you've got the top 4 out of the 5 with Elizabeth Warren being the 5th one in the polls. So it's going to be interesting to see with all that kind of wattage there who's going to be able to stand out, and are some of the other people that are a little bit lower down the polls going to be able to have their moments, and how many gaffes is Biden going to do? How's Kamala Harris going to do? Because it's going to be interesting. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how it comes across tomorrow when you've got kind of the moderate leader with Biden and the progressive leader with Sanders, and how everyone else is going to fall in tomorrow. Will be very interesting.
It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah.
And we will be back here tomorrow with the Trump Report, same time, 9 o'clock, tomorrow night. And I will not be here. Christian will be back.
I will be here.
Chelsea will be here.
And I will not be here either.
And our friend Drexel Hurd will be
Our friend
joining us.
Drexel may be sitting in. So come back tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at sman80. That's SMAN80.
And me at Chelsea Galicia on
Chelsea
Twitter.
Galicia. And find me on YouTube at Hey Tamra, HeyTamra. And check out my Sarah Huckabee Sanders videos because that's it. I have to retire them. There are no more. So give me a like while I can.
Well, when she runs for governor of Arkansas, you may have a moment again.
In 2 years, I'll can resurrect them. All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.